Today's year is sponsored by Susan Jerkowitz. He's in honor of the birth of the latest edition, Yehuda Arya, known also as George, or Leo George.
Leo George.
Leo George the First. So, not enough us.
Mazel tov, mazel
All of
tov.
them can I know her? We do say it's Hungarian.
Which one of them is? Korach or Puka? Korach. Puka is so nice.
Parshat Korach you can find on page 820. On page 820. And the structure of this week's portion is a rebellion. A very common way of leading a rebellion is by the leader of the rebellion making the claim that what he is doing and trying to achieve is not for himself, but for everyone else. Right? Everyone's holy. Kind of religious socialism. Everyone has the ability to communicate with God. Why have these leaders? Right? And it's interesting you see in the news of the collapse of Venezuela. Right? Rebellion. Right? Everyone has the right. Why only the wealthy can have all those privileges? So you kick out the wealthy, destroy the economy, and even the poor people are recognizing what a destructive way of leading a country. So this is a rebellion that is occurring here. And the one being challenged is Moshe and Aharon. Moshe and Aaron are being challenged. So the portion at the end really is giving its support to Moshe and Aharon by declaring that there are gifts given to them. These are gifts that belong to them, and by the Torah declaring that indeed it is given to the Kohanim and Leviim, it is strengthening and solidifying their stand. So what we're going to focus on is actually on the gifts that are given, not all of them, but some of them, the main ones, the main categories of gifts, given to Kohanim and Leviim. And the two words that we're going to focus on are obviously going to be Truma, Maaser. Those are the ones we're going to focus on. Truma itself is given to the Kohen. So you gather your grain. You have to give some of it to the Kohen. How much do you give? So believe it or not, according to Torah law, we are told the following statement: Chita achat poteret et hakeri. In other words, if you have a pile, imagine we're talking about a significant pile, the size of this room. Technically speaking, according to the letter of the law and according to the Torah itself, all you need to do is that when the Kohen comes by, he says, "Oh, by the way, I haven't given yet my truma. I'm so happy that you have arrived, Kohen," and you hand him over one chita, one tube of grain, and you say, "Oh, thank you so much. Goodbye. Mission accomplished." Odd way of doing things, but this is how it works. Now the rabbis say, "Come on. You're not going to go ahead and give the Kohen one chita." So they make a recommendation. Give more. One stock. How much do you give? The rabbis say, well, it depends. Make a decision. They give you this flexibility. Right? Where else do you find this in Jewish law, such flexibility? And they say that if you are a very kind fellow and you like the Kohen, give him a 40th. A 40th. If he's an average Kohen, give him 1/50th, 2%. Or, if he's a Kohen that just doesn't seem that you connect with him, give him a 60th. But it's a very fascinating law, because you have a situation that according to Torah law, you really could give him close to nothing, just give him something. And even the rabbis, they left it open. There's flexibility. And this is given, again, Parshat Korach starts off with a rebellion. God wants to solidify these gifts to the Kohanim and Leviim. Truma is number one. On the other hand, the gift given to the Levi is very different. If you even analyze the word ma'aser, comes from the word me'eser, give him 10%. And while for the Kohen we are told that there's flexibility, you don't give him with precision. When it comes to the Levi, you have to be sure to measure. You shouldn't be ma'aser be'umdina. Umdina means just with an assessment. No good. With the Levi, you have to come with a measuring cup. Different people, when they make, we have a pour-over coffee at home, right? So some of us have a minute of being precise. That if you put 1 scoop of coffee, you have to have X amount of ounces. Then there are those that just, some days will be a little bit stronger, some days, right? So for the Levi, it got to be precise. Ma'aser, me'eser, no umdina, no assessment. Kohen, you know how it works. You technically give him nothing, but you give him very little. Give him a little bit more, a little bit less. So what's the idea behind it? I mean, it's obviously not random. There's obviously a message there. It's part of Torah. And if there's such a clear-cut contrast between that which demands precision and that which we are told give based on the person or based on your feeling, there must be a reason for it. Now, as children, we loved Pesach, right? As adults, we try, for some it's more of a challenge. But among the popular songs that we never get to because we're too tired is the Echad Mi Yodea. Right? It's like you're out. Echad Mi Yodea, the Echad is your pillow for many of us. But Echad Mi Yodea, it's a very popular song. How it became part of Jewish tradition is an interesting question. So I knew it as a kid, right? Shlosh Avot, Shtei Luchot Habrit, Echad, Elokenu. Okay. So at one point in Israel, they had a program on TV, probably around 10 years old. They had a program on TV before Pesach. And it was about the Zdarim among different streams and Jews that come from different countries. And there are different minhagim, how they make the charoses and what they do. And then they started singing the Echad Mi Yodea and Ladino. Ladino, it's the Yiddish for the Sfardim. Just like we have our Yiddish, they have their Ladino. And even when they moved to other countries, like in North Africa, they still kept their Ladino songs. And it's even spoken. There are communities that they still speak their Ladino. So they were singing the Echad Mi Yodea and Ladino. And they got to the Shtei, to the two, Dos. And their song is Dos Moshe I Aharon. Now, unless I got something wrong, I have to do my research to see if it's indeed so, and it was surprising, what happened to the Luchot Habrit? Right? What's wrong? Why is it that they go from Moshe? It's true, there are two. But are they significant players? So what if there are two? Right? So, it could have been three. Aaron, Moshe, and Miriam, they could have used it for three. What's the idea? So the truth is, there's a statement made by the Maharal. There's many people here in Prague. You know the Maharal, right? You know the Golem as well. Right? The Maharal existed. So the Maharal tells us you should know the Exodus, the Yetziat Mitzrayim could not occur without Moshe and Aharon. Because they have to balance things out. Meaning if you have a Judaism, you want to have a functional Judaism, you need to have a balance here between two different forces. And Moshe and Aaron have the ability to balance things because they have differences in personalities, and we need both. Okay, so indeed, for Yetziat Mitzrayim, Moshe and Aaron play a very, very significant role. What's the role? So, it is labeled by many as the difference between a person of chesed and a person of emet or din. Could be really the same thing. The person of kindness, the person that connects the people, and the person who has the letter of the law, right? As is, the letter of the law, the din. Give me 1 second. Which one's the cup? There's the smaller one. Okay, so what do we have so far? Emet and Chesed. You know, it says that when Aaron HaKohen dies next week, or in Israel already, Nebuch, they have to deal with it already this week. Aaron dies, and we are told, "Vayifku oto kol bet Yisrael." Everyone mourned the loss. Moshe didn't get that. Why? Aaron connected to people, and Aaron connected people. Aaron was a person, right? He was labeled Ish Chasidecha, the man of kindness. The Midrash that shares with us the story that Aaron would welcome a person, and the individual would feel such love from Aaron HaKohen that when the next day he would want to do something wrong, he would say, I would have difficulty looking into the face of Aaron if I do something wrong. Meaning, if you connect to a person, and the person you connect to values specific things, it's important for them, you don't feel comfortable doing it, even not in front of them. There's a connection. Connected people, connected to one another. The sources, the rabbinic sources that tell us how he would bring people together. When they would have a fight, he would turn to each party and say that deep down, the other individual truly desires to reconnect to you. Ishto, husband and wife. Aaron HaKohen is Ohev Shalom, Verodev Shalom. And it's no coincidence that we're familiar with Hillel, who tells us, Hillel Omer, you want to live a life that is based on true Jewish values. You have to be a person that is Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom. You should be a Talmid Shel Aaron, be a disciple. Follow the school, follow the approach of Aaron HaKohen, who was a lover of peace, who pursued peace, and Ohevet HaBriot, love people, Mekarvan Torah, brings them close to Torah. That's Aaron HaKohen. I think my father notes, maybe you got it from somewhere else, that when Moshe Rabbeinu, earlier in his career, shares with Rabbanu Shalom that he's going to have difficulty leading the people, the Rabbanu Shalom says, you know what? You'll have Aharon with you. And who yeh lecha lepeh. Who, he, meaning Aaron, yeh lecha, he shall be for you lepeh. For a mouth. In other words, he will be the communicator. He will be the one to take on that role. And if you look at the letters that spell who, yeh, lecha lepeh, you have a hey, a yud, a lamed, and a lamed. Who, yeh, lecha lepeh, which spells Hillel. My father writes also that if you look at Moshe Rabbeinu, who identifies himself to the Rabbanu Shalom and says, listen, I don't really have the ability to communicate because lo ish dvarim anochi, I am not a man of words. And if you take the last letters there, lo ish dvarim anochi, you have an aleph, a shin, a mem, and a yud, Shammai. So something that came together there. So here we have the Aaron HaKohen is obviously the man of Chesed, where there are no boundaries. There are no boundaries at all. It's interesting that I remember in Chile, we were in Cologne, Chile, and we were informed that a few people are going to be joining us from Israel for a few months to study there, and one of them was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Gura. So we asked one of the Israelis, do you know Rabbi Gura? And he says, yeah, I know Rabbi Gura. And Rabbi Gura's reputation is as follows, that if someone calls him that they need a place to stay, he'll say, come to my house. And if there are no beds available, he wouldn't have a problem that he would sleep in the bathtub. And he would give his bed, right, for a guest. That was this Rabbi Gura. Boundaries don't exist. When a person is a person of kindness, when he's a person that he connects to people, you know, the type of person that if they're supposed to be at an appointment or at a meeting, and they're going to be busy schmoozing with someone, time vanishes. Time vanishes because they're involved with another person. They're connecting to another human being. Boundaries do not exist because love has no limits. That is a person of chesed. Right? That is a person that connects to people. Obviously, we need to balance it out with people who have the justice, the truth. You've heard of Reb Aryeh Levin, obviously, the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, Reb Aryeh Levin. And they note, it's interesting that in Israel, with all the negativity that unfortunately exists, or existed more in the past, I could say, towards some of the religious people, on the Israeli TV, they would have an event in the beginning of the month of Nisan for the Yortzeit of Reb Aryeh Levin, where you would have secular people sitting around the table, sharing stories about Reb Aryeh Levin. Sharing stories how he would go visit them during the mandate, visit them in jail, right? He connected to people. Ohevet Habrei, he deeply, truly loved people. You love people, you connect to people. That is Aharon HaKohen. It's interesting. I remember we lived in Buffalo. You know Buffalo, New York? You know Buffalo, New York. You ever go there once in a while? Now with our dollar, that Shvach says, it's no longer what? You go to Tops. Those felt in Canada, nice niche, but we go to Tops, right? And they come here for shopping. So when we moved to Western New York, this is 1997, there was an airport. There is an airport there, Buffalo Airport. You've flown out of there as well, I'm sure. But at the time, it was controlled by U.S. Air. It was all U.S. Air. It was smaller, and it was all U.S. Air. And at the time, it was one of the most expensive airports in the country, 1997. So there's a guy running for the Senate by the name of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer was running, and Chuck Schumer ran. He came to Buffalo, and he promised that if indeed you get him to Washington, he's going to do whatever he could, pull any strings that he does have the ability to pull, to bring cheap airfare to Buffalo, New York. That was his promise. What? Oh, so Chuck Schumer, the fellow who lost at the time was a fellow called Al D'Amato. Al D'Amato, if you remember. Al D'Amato was, it's interesting, Al D'Amato was, came into office and he became a senator in 1980. He was on the coattails of Ronald Reagan. So then in 98 already, it's his third term. He's already shtickle, over his, you get comfortable in Washington. You get comfortable, even though he himself, I knew some people in Buffalo that were always voting Democratic, but would vote for him because throughout the years after the 82 war and in Israel and in Lebanon, and there was missing soldiers, he kept in touch. In other words, his office was in touch with some people, local people in Buffalo, that one of their relatives was Nebach MIA, missing in action. He kept in touch with them. In other words, for them, he would do anything that was needed or required. So they had a tremendous amount of akara sato from him. Anyway, Chuck Schumer gets voted in, and Buffalo Airport gets cheap airfare, and there's a and they bring in JetBlue. And JetBlue, there's even more simcha because there's blue potato chips. So this is what's happening. So I finally, after hearing about it and discussing it, I get on my first, put on your suit, chashav a suit, and you go on your first JetBlue flight from Buffalo to JFK. And there's a big simcha. Now, and in the pockets there, they had a Time magazine. And actually, on the Time magazine itself, there was an article about Mr. Was it Neilman was his name? I think it was Mr. Neilman, who is the CEO of the company. CEO, and he started it, so this Mr. David Neilman was his name. David Neilman, so there's an article about him, about JetBlue and its success. I get off the flight in JFK, and as I'm leaving the plane, you see a crew that's waiting to jump on the plane, clean up the garbage, and turn it around, because that's how these flights make their money, by keeping them on the ground as short as possible. And there's a staff there with their garbage bags ready to pick up the garbage, and I look at them, and one of the people there waiting in line to go ahead and collect the garbage is Mr. David Neilman. David Neilman's there ready to collect. And I said to him, this is very interesting. I just read an article about you. And he was a very kind individual, very nice. Right afterwards, he's a Mormon. But a very special, very nice individual. And then one of the workers pointed out as follows, that you should know that Neilman, Mr. Neilman, treats every single worker with dignity and as a person. He connects. And even though I have the ability of joining another airline and perhaps make some more money, it's not worth it. I want that personal connection, the respect and the dignity. And it's an amazing thing for a CEO, because it's a company with hundreds, if not thousands of workers, the ability to make every person, to see the person in the person, the sense that we're not dealing here with a piece, with a robot. You're not dealing here with someone that's just there to fulfill specific tasks, but to see the person. That was his ability. That's what they say. And that elevates, it gives you a feeling, gives you the dignity when you are treated with that dignity. Aaron HaKohen Oev Shalom Verodev Shalom. So obviously we need such a personality to have a Yetzias Mitzrayim. But if we're going to only have the one who connects, we could run into some trouble as well. We need to have, the rabbis tell us, there's a Gemara, that the approach of Moshe Rabbeinu was, and listen to these words, Moshe Rabbeinu took the approach that if the law requires something, even if you have all the impediments and the difficulties in the way, Yikov Hadin et Hahar. Yikov, let it pierce. Let law pierce a mountain. Meaning, if it says so in the books, it's black and white. There is no flexibility. Right? The man of truth, the man who experienced truth, has no ability to be flexible at all, because if you know that something is 100% not kosher, and you have a discussion between two parties if it's there or not, you will basically yell out, it is, right, not kosher. Because when the law is clear, flexibility cannot play a role. That's the Moshe Rabbeinu. That is Moshe Rabbeinu. He is the man of justice. And it's interesting that when the Talmud talks about Shammai, it talks about his inability to be flexible. Right? When you had a person walking through his door and says, I want to convert to Judaism, but I want to become the high priest. So Shammai says, get out of here. He could not interact with someone that is requesting absurdity. Hillel, on the other hand, welcomed him, connected to him, dealt with him, and set him on the right path. These are different personalities. And
why will we have Din Shammai after all the dinim from Beit Shammai after Mashiach comes?
So we have to know what that means exactly. It really symbolizes the idea that there'll be a clarity, right? So we could deal with things in a way that we see things clearly. It doesn't technically mean that we're going to go ahead and rewrite our whole Shulchan Aruch. It symbolizes something. And when you want to say that in the world we live in, we need a hillel. We need flexibility. We have to have that ability to go ahead and say, listen, it's not black and white. For you, it would be perhaps permissible. For others, not. Before I went to Buffalo, I was listening to a tape of a rabbi in Chicago. His name is Rabbi Shmuel First, the big posted, a very, very well-respected authority. And Rabbi First in this lecture was trying to point out that not everything is black and white, and there's a gray area in Jewish law, and you have to have some common sense. And he shared with us the following story, that in the early 70s, as he was entering into the rabbinate and halacha guidance and psak, he spent some time by Rav Moshe Feinstein. At the same time, there was a rabbi, Rabbi Kalman Winter, alav shalom, who was spending some time by Rav Moshe as well. And each one of them would find time to walk into Rav Moshe and ask him a series of questions. So Rabbi First would enter with a few of his questions, and he would ask Rav Moshe, and Rav Moshe would say that would be okay in case of great need, which what we call in halacha is shat hatchak, meaning not ideal, but it's okay when necessary. So, and he's going through, so Rabbi First has a record of all those teachings of Rav Moshe. Afterwards, he starts comparing notes with what Rabbi Winter, who was on his way to Buffalo, New York, right, to become the first rabbi of the young Israel there, and they start comparing notes, and they realize that there's a discrepancy. That there were things that Rav Moshe says to Rabbi First, who was going to Chicago, it is okay only in case of need. And then, for Rabbi Winter, who was going to Buffalo, New York, he said it's 100% fine. So they felt that this is odd, so they go back to Rav Moshe. And Ramosha explained to him that both Buffalo, New York is always Shas Hatchak. In other words, at Buffalo, New York, you have to be lenient there. This is not Chicago. You can't go ahead and walk in with high standards. You have to use common sense. That's what Buffalo, I remember that throughout my years in Buffalo. The Buffalo is always Shas Hatchak. That was the motto of my experience there. What was that?
The shul also, maybe, no?
Buffalo is having a renaissance now. You know that.
Yes,
You know that they're having a renaissance. You know, Ezzy Marcus is Bezrat Hashem going to be rabbi.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So now they're doing better than they're doing very well now. Anyway, so with that, so there has to be, you have to have flexibility in Jewish law. Obviously exists. Everyone's talking in the past few days in the news with the passing of Wiesel. Wiesel. And among the, I don't know if it's highlights, but one of the events that really struck the world of what he stands for is when he was getting the Medal of Honor in the White House in May 1985, honored by Ronald Reagan. And this is right after Ronald Reagan messed things up a little bit by being invited to Bitburg, to a cemetery where they had some SS soldiers. In other words, we shouldn't exaggerate what occurred there. This was a cemetery of German soldiers with some of the SS. And the world got, especially the Jewish community, got wind of it and felt that this is a tremendous chutzpah and a disrespect to the victims of the Holocaust. Reagan was in a very, very tough situation because it already was publicized, and he didn't want to, hurt the Germans and trying to reconcile, working with reconciliation. And there, Wiesel is standing in the White House, and he turns to him, and you can see it on YouTube. It's very powerful when he says, "I have a tremendous amount of respect for you, Mr. Reagan, Mr. President. But as Jews, we speak the truth to power," quoting a verse, right, about even Emes in front of kings. And he says that you should know the issue, said Wiesel, is not politics. It's not politics, but good and evil. That was his point, right? That Europe, presidents have to play politics. You have to go ahead and do things at times that are not ideal, but you have to have a voice of truth, that tells you this is something that is a problem. And if you don't have that voice of truth, if you're not going to have a person that's going to go ahead and have an actual truth, you will not have a balanced Judaism. For Yetziat Mitzrayim, you know what you need? A Moshe and you need an Aaron. That's the way you succeed. You need both such personalities. Now, think about something very interesting. In teachers, employees who get gifts from an institution. Start with teachers. We had a principal here, right? You do find at times that you have a teacher who's getting a salary, and they find in their box in the teacher's room a little card that says thank you, with, let's say, a $15 gift card to Starbucks or Indigo. The concept exists. Now let's analyze it really. Let's analyze it. Is it meaningful for the teacher because they're going to get another book in Indigo that they could probably get in the library? Is it for the teacher meaningful because they're going to go ahead and get a latte that's extra large with 16 different flavors that cost $15? Is that really what is meaningful for the teacher? Obviously not. What is it that is meaningful for the teacher? The fact that there's recognition, appreciation, you're connecting there, you're a person, right? And we know that in every business, in every institution, right? If you connect to the person, it is something that it's appreciated. I still remember when I was one of those moments. I'm 16 years old, and I was here in Toronto on my way to Yeshiva, and it was myself going on my way to Chicago, and I'm staying by family friends, by the Friedbergs, down south, Nancy and Dov Friedberg. And at the time they had a cleaning lady, or a help, I should say, that was working in the kitchen, and she was leaving. She was there for a couple of weeks or months, and she was leaving. And as I hear the interaction between herself and Mr. Friedberg as they are saying goodbye. So she says, Mr. Friedberg, it was so nice, and I'm so sorry it didn't work out. That's what she said. His response is, what do you mean it didn't work out? It was such an amazing pleasure to have you here. It was so nice to have you here. He made her feel like the most important person in the world, right? You connect to a person. By the way, for a 16-year-old, right, this was a message for life. In other words, this is how you interact with a person. Don't view them as an employee. Don't view them as someone that is there to be no different than a piece of equipment. Connect to a person. Now, we all need it, but people who function with kindness, people who are naturally ones who connect to people, need such appreciation more. One more time. People who naturally connect to people, right? When they see someone else, they don't see the person as someone, okay, in what way can you assist me in getting me my paycheck or my next meal? But rather, they connect to the person. If I am a person that I emotionally connect to another person, what I need in return more than anything else is connection, is an appreciation, an understanding that I am a human being. Right? The teacher who goes ahead and comes into the workplace and gives the students time after hours and is devoted to the institution, to the school, and really connects and is concerned and will put hours a night to figure out a way to teach that a specific student can really comprehend the material. The person who has no boundaries needs appreciation in that realm as well. You hear the idea. On the other hand, the actuary, right? The actuary, the person who everything works with precision and black and white, right? You know, there's no need for they don't need the boss. They want to be sure that their paycheck is precisely $190,264.27 because they are actuaries. They don't need any recognition, right? Everything is numbers. I'm not saying that all actuaries have no personality. I'm not saying that all accountants do. But I'm just saying, that's your joke that you like giving. But the truth is, there are people that are very much, right, numbers. It's all, everything with precision. There are such personalities. By the way, these are excellent legislators. These are excellent judges. They are excellent judges. Why? Black and white. You need someone to understand law, get to the core of it, to get to the core of the law. Such people don't need the $15 Indigo gift. Why? Everything works with precision. Now let's go back, right, with the personalities. If Moshe, and by the way, the Levi'im, symbolize emet, din. It's interesting that we are told that the formation in the wilderness was such that you had the Kohanim in the middle and the Levi'im around them. And the sources know that any time that you have personalities of kindness, it has no boundaries. You need someone to put a boundary around them. Right? You need, in other words, sometimes in marriages you have such a situation where you could have one party that has no boundaries, and the responsibility of the spouse is that boundaries should exist. In other words, you're working for 14 institutions and you're running around and now I'm pointing to you, and you're everywhere and you're overworked and you're nonstop. So you need someone that says, Adkan. In other words, you need to have someone it places boundaries there. Because we can't work, you can't destroy yourself. What was that?
Never mind.
Okay. Not application. You can't have it. You simply can't have, a person.
Good thing Annie's not here.
Navoti voli. In other words, there must be boundaries. Must exist. Levi'im symbolize the precision and the boundaries, and it could be very well. And this I would have to ask the music experts here. That music in some ways also even though there is emotion, but to read notes and that there is precision that is required there as well. Levi'im, Moshe, symbolize precision. For them, a gift is ma'aser, the 10%. That's what they want. They want 10%, nothing less, nothing more. You can't work with an umdana, you can't work with guesses, and you can't work with estimates. They are precision. The Kohen, on the other hand, if you would be giving, a Kohen who gives his life to connect to people, to assist people, right, to inspire people, They will sit there listening for hours to someone that is going through difficulty. Boundaries do not exist for the Kohen. If you're going to go ahead and say to the Kohen, okay, it's time to give you your gift, so let me measure it in a very precise amount, and here it is. It's not going to work for him. Yes, he'll be able to live off it, but he won't have that feeling of a gift was given. He needs to feel a connection. Just as he gives, his receiving has to be that he feels that the person, technically speaking, chita achat poteret etakli, you could give him one stock. That would be technically enough. And then everyone gives more. You know what the feeling is? I'm connected to you, you are connected to me. Right? The emotional person could get hurt much faster because the heart is open. Right? And it's a big problem that we humans have, that we are sensitive beings, but mouths are like knives and hearts are open, right? So people get hurt. This is something that happens, that we say things, right? And we don't realize that there's an open heart there, that you're going to go ahead and you're going to injure it. That's a reality that exists. The Kohen, Aharon HaKohen, the Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom, and his children, they symbolize the emotional being that is attached. The gift has to be, number one, that according to Torah law, you give them anything only for the purpose that when you actually give them more, they feel that they are connecting to a person. And therefore, there's flexibility when it comes to the amount that should be given. It could be 1 out of 40, it could be 1 out of 50, it could be 1 out of 60. The Kohen feels that I am getting because I am indeed connecting to a person. That's the idea. That's the idea of these specific gifts that are given to the two. So now that we have an understanding of the Truma and the Maaser and the Moshe and Aaron, in this week's portion that begins off with the big challenge to Moshe and Aaron. And we want to go ahead and solidify their standing, solidify them. It ends off, and this is all what you have heard, appears at the end of the portion, where we are told from page 830 and on. Okay. If you look at page 832, actually. Vaydaber, 832 verse 8. Vaydaber Hashem el Aharon v'ani hine natati lachat mishmeret trumati. I gave you, right, the safeguard of these offerings. And it gives you the list. The list includes other gifts. But it starts off from verse 8 on page 832 until verse 21. It's the gifts to the Kohanim. And then, verse 22, V'livnei Levi, verse 21, on page 834, Hine natati kol ma'aser be'Yisrael. They get, specifically, the ma'aser, and that fulfills their role based on their needs. I would like to thank everyone for joining us throughout the season. This is the end of the season, and so everyone gets an A. And I truly appreciate all those who come, and I appreciate those who view it as well. And thank you again, Susan, for sponsoring. And everyone have a wonderful and safe summer. We share B'sorot Tovot from Eretz Yisrael and everywhere. And we'll see you B'ezrat Hashem in September.
Good.